America's biggest and best homecoming is this setting for Oklahoma State's biggest game of the 2022 season. The Cowboys welcome Texas into Boone Pickens Stadium. Welcome to Countdown to Kickoff, Bud Light Game Time, live from Eskimo Joe's Joe State Tailgate inside our RV General Store mobile studio. Gideon Hamilton, soon to be joined by Rashaun Woods. You can check us out video as well, WWLS app, Sports Animal Facebook page, or the Sports Animal on YouTube. If you want to check out everything that's going on, got a great crowd shot right now of Joe State Tailgate. Looks like what is easily the biggest crowd of the season to this point. And Matt Myers with us, of course, just giving us that score update. Iowa just threw a pick 6 against Ohio State to make that game 26-10 at the break. I'm looking at some of the work that the students did over the course of probably the last several weeks, but was on display last night for walk around and is out there today. And obviously notable athletic alumni was one of the themes that they worked with. Victor Hovland, Marcus Smart, John Smith, Eddie Sutton, all represented. You have to take a look at some of these things that have been put together by the student body. Oklahoma State Athletics account. I'll get this out if you want to take a look at it. But there is homecoming is always a special week, no matter where you go, as we bring in two-time All-American Rashaun Woods. But there's something different, Rashaun, about homecoming here at OSU.
Well, yeah, I mean, the festivities are something that, as you know, I've graduated and now I got kids. I have a chance to bring my kids down to see the floats, to see the everything that goes on that's associated around it, and truly one of the biggest homecoming celebrations in the country, and just the attention to it all and the pride that Oklahoma State's and the alum take in either watching it and viewing it, or the kids and the young adults at this point taking pride in their floats and the decorations. Man, it's truly, truly special.
The other thing that we're looking at is we're in upwards of the high double digits, maybe as many as like 90 some odd recruits that Oklahoma State has brought into this game today. So this is always a big recruiting weekend for Oklahoma State, but there's a ton of kids on campus this week.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of it, right? You want to get high-quality young men to be a part of your program. What better game to be playing Texas at home, and then have homecoming in tow as well. And so just a big-time game, a big-time celebration that's going on outside of the game that they can be able to watch and somewhat be a part of. And then, their team, although you didn't get it done last week, still a top 15 team in the country. Team has been consistently good over the last 10 or 15 years, and a lot of positives, man, that will help you in trying to sway some of pretty much the best young talent and best young individuals in America.
So just in the last 2 minutes, Oklahoma State always releases around the time that our show begins, who's going to be in and who's going to be out, they anticipate for that day's game. So we just found out this information. Spencer Sanders is going to play today, but there are a bunch of notable absences. Brendan Evers isn't going to be around the rest of the year as he tries to prepare for what's coming up in his future. But Rashaun, listen to these, man. This is not good for Oklahoma State on a day that they play high-quality competition. Jaden Bray remains out. Thomas Harper is out. Braden Johnson will miss today's game. Preston Wilson remains out. Of course, he was absent from Oklahoma State's loss a week ago against TCU. And Brock Martin is out as well. A couple of these are at some of the deeper position areas for Oklahoma State, but those are still going to sting today.
Yeah, no question about it in the game, which is, extremely, extremely vital that Oklahoma State gets the victory. And so, there's been chances, I wouldn't say opportunities, but there's been instances last year Oklahoma State was able to overcome those. They're going to have to do so again as well. And that's when you talk about recruiting and why it's so important and that you have depth at a lot of different positions. And Oklahoma State has really done a good job in that, in having enough guys. And so when you have a deep receiver room, when you got a couple of guys out, well, you're thankful that you have that, because you got guys that can fill in, that can make plays for you down the field when you have guys that are not necessarily going to be there that you're dependent on. And so that's going to have to happen today. Spencer Sanders, obviously, people have known that he's been banged up for a couple of weeks now. It was evident in the game last week. And he should be healing and getting better. So you're hoping that he's going to be better this week than he was last week, although I'm not going to say that he was horrible by any stretch. Mm-hmm. You just want the guy to be at full strength. And so offensive line-wise, in the interior line-wise, you've got enough depth there to where I don't think 1 or 2 injuries is going to hurt you a whole lot. But if you lose another guy, even a team at the level or caliber of Oklahoma State is going to feel that. And so hopefully you don't have any more catastrophic type situations where you got a couple guys going down at one position like you've had in the past. But still, I think Oklahoma State can still win. They've done a good enough job in preparing for these situations that although it will slow them down at those positions, they can still overcome and win today.
So loaded show today. We're going to have some guests we usually don't have an opportunity to get a chance to talk to. We'll get their perspective on Oklahoma State football, both to this point in this season. Craig Humphreys is coming up here in just a few minutes. Sam Mays, Rashaun's former teammate, and mine as well, here on the radio, is going to join us around 1 o'clock. And then Barry Trammell from the Oklahoman will be along a little bit later on. One final note for you, Rashaun, as you've had a little bit of time this week to go back and look and reflect on what happened against TCU. Oklahoma State with a 17-point lead early in that game. They led by a couple of scores with just over 9 minutes remaining. What are some of your final thoughts on Oklahoma State and TCU? Just an unfortunate defeat for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I went back and just watched that part of the game. Just kind of saw what Oklahoma State maybe could have done differently. And, again, it's all hindsight. It's 2020. I think it's important to understand that as I start to kind of criticize. But you definitely – in the future and in this game, anytime that you're up or you're in a situation where you want to maybe salt away the game, you've got to be able to do that. And the way you just do that is in running the football, right? Oklahoma State has got to be more consistent running the football. And consistency is not necessarily saying, hey, we had 4 yards of carry or 5 yards of carry today. It's more so not having a 25-yard gain and then going 3 or 4 times in a row and gaining 0 yards, right? Yep. It's got to be a consistent 3 to 5 yards per carry, like in a literal sense, and be able to get first downs doing that and imposing your will through execution and physicality. Oklahoma State has to do that. And the next thing, time management. I have been criticized heavily in my time management here recently as a coach, but I can tell you when you run no huddle, you have to know when it's important to get in what we call a 4-minute offense and be able to run a cabal. But if you can't run the football, then you're forced to kind of continue to go fast. And so hopefully Oklahoma State can find a happy medium there. Again, whether you're throwing the football or you're not, you got a 40-second play clock. It makes no sense to snap the ball in 10 and 15 seconds when you're up 2 touchdowns with 9 minutes left. That's the obvious thing to say. That's the hindsight thing to say on that deal. But let me finish with this on that. Yep. If the guys make the catches or the throws are made that need to be made, which would have resulted in either first downs or touchdowns in last week's game in that fourth quarter, we would not even be talking about the time management. Okay, right. And so that's where the execution part comes in. If Sanders is able to complete the ball and not throw those balls short for one reason or another, we're not talking about these things, and everything that Oklahoma State does from a playing standpoint and from a coaching standpoint is the right decision. And so it still comes down to whatever you decide to do as a team, whatever Oklahoma State decides to do, it's about execution and physicality in that aspect.
If you want to check out more of the game day atmosphere, we're live on the WWLS app where you can actually see what's going on out there in Stillwater, where I know a lot of fans are eager to come by, say hi to Rashaun Woods. You can also view that on our Sports Animal Facebook page or the Sports Animal YouTube page. We are just about 2 hours away from kickoff. Oklahoma State and Texas today. Really important game in terms of Big 12 standings and the margin for error you would have to have at the end of this game if Oklahoma State were to lose. They're about a touchdown underdog today to the Longhorns. We'll come back. We'll get some insight from Craig Humphreys. He will join us when we return. Rashaun Woods in Stillwater at our beautiful RV General Store mobile studio. Gideon Hamilton back here inside our Sports Animal studio as we get you set for game time here on Bud Light Game Time. Joe State Tailgate live from Eskimo Joe's. It's countdown to kickoff on the Sports Animal.
3rd, Baylor well on top of Kansas, 28-3. 2 o'clock today, West Virginia is at Texas Tech. And at 2:30, or rather 7 o'clock today, beg your pardon, number 17 K-State is at number 8 TCU. And again, Oklahoma and Iowa State off today in the Big 12. Halftime scores. Number 2, Ohio State leads Iowa 26-10. Number 3, Tennessee blowing out Tennessee Martin 52-7. Keep an eye on this. Number 14, Syracuse leads number 5, Clemson 21-10. Number 21, Cincinnati leads SMU 20-14. Again, all those games are at the half. 2:30 games today. Number 7, Ole Miss is at LSU. The big one, number 9, UCLA at number 10, Oregon. Number 13, Wake Forest hosting Boston College. And number 25, Tulane is home for Memphis. 6 o'clock tonight, number 24, Mississippi State is at number 6, Alabama. And 6:30 tonight, number 16, Penn State is at Minnesota.
Countdown to kickoff and Bud Light Game Time from inside the RV General Store mobile studio at Eskimo Joe's Joe State Tailgate. Sponsored by Lucky Star Casino, Rob's Ranch, Addiction Treatment for Men, Triple Play Home Services, Midwest Engineering and Testing Corporation, McBride Orthopedic Hospital Clinic, The Metal Store, and ZT Cigars. Who will air it out in today's game?
Okay, guys, here we go.
Comfort Solutions. Make the winning call. Call 405-721-3740.
About an hour and a half away from kickoff inside Boone Pickens Stadium. It's Oklahoma State and Texas today. Important game in the Big 12 Conference Championship game race. Gideon Hamilton inside our Sports Animal Studios. The All-American Rashaun Woods is inside our RV General Store mobile studio right across the street from Eskimo Joe's, part of Joe State Tailgate here on Countdown to Kickoff. Who's going to air it out today? So we just found out, Rashaun, that not only will Jaden Bray remain out, but Braden Johnson, who is probably the favorite deep threat of Spencer Sanders, will be on the sidelines for this game as well. So how can Oklahoma State attack the field vertically? Who's going to be a guy that can do that for the Cowboys today?
Boy, that's my initial thought. It has to be John Paul Richardson. I think that he's good enough to push the ball down the field as far as making plays with his feet. He's shown that he can go up and make the tough catch. Brendan Presley, to me, is a guy who's an intermediate guy. He made some plays in the bowl game a couple years back down the field in his breakout game where he showed that he has that ability, but not a tall guy at all. And so typically when you're playing guys and you're trying to go down the field, you want to throw the balls to guys that are probably 6'2" and up. And so with that probably maybe X's him out unless you got a guy where you get a matchup situation where both guys are about the same height. But John Paul has shown some really, really good signs of being a guy that can really, really make plays for the Cowboys in a lot of different ways, man. And as electric as some guys are, he's a one-cut kind of guy who can make the first guy miss pretty consistently and do some things. But really, Bryson Green, from a target guy, from a guy who's you're targeting him just maybe 5 times, and he makes 4 catches for 80-something yards and 2 touchdowns. I think this is his opportunity to really, really take it to the next step. I don't know what it is about him, but they're just not going to him as much as I think that they should when you consider the plays that he's making. When he's going up over guys and making plays consistently, they're trying to go to everybody else but him. Is this the game where they say, you know what, this is the next guy because of injury? I can think about my career and a lot of the guys that I play with. It took a guy getting hurt for me to have the opportunity to show that I can make plays. Even though I had shown that I can make those type of plays in practice day in and day out, the confidence that the coaching staff had in other guys that were on that team when I played there was a lot higher. Those guys were older. They were bigger guys. But an ankle injury ended up happening to a particular guy. I was the next guy in line. And because I had maybe 2 or 3 games to show that, hey, you know what, maybe I can do this on a consistent basis, even though I'm a young guy, that gave me the opportunity to show that I could do it. And then clearly from then on, the rest was history when those guys ended up coming back. Is that the type of day? Is that the kind of situation that Bryson Green has right now? Hopefully so. I think it's important that they have a deep threat for the Cowboys. That's a part of what they do. To be honest with you, if they don't have a deep threat that's consistently on this team or on this receiving core, Oklahoma State is not the team that we know them to be right now. They don't have a big-time receiver. They're not the football team that we've come to know them as. And so somebody has to fill those shoes. If they don't, unfortunately, it's not going to be a very, very good offensive day for the Cowboys.
Right. Let's go ahead and bring him in. You know him, of course, from Sports Morning every weekday here on the Sports Animal from 9 till noon. A legend in his own right is Craig Humphreys. Craig, thanks so much for joining us today.
You bet. Gideon. Hey, Rashaun.
Hey, what's up?
Craig, boy, we just ran through it. Evers, of course, we know the story there. Jaden Bray and Braden Johnson out. Thomas Harper out from the middle of that Cowboys defense. Preston Wilson, the offensive line. Brock Martin from the defensive line. So everywhere you look, there's a key absence at the worst possible time for Oklahoma State today. How does Oklahoma State get past that?
And we thought the line was going up just because of the concerns of Spencer Sanders.
Right.
So you said, Gideon, let me get this straight. And I was writing these down a while ago when you said Jaden Bray and Braden Johnson, Brock Martin, a key from the defensive line, Preston Wilson, of course, key from the offensive line. Now Thomas Harper, and that's a bunch right there. Yep. It is. And I heard what Rashaun just said. I mean, those guys, especially Bray and Johnson, as you guys know better than I do, I mean, they're so key to OSU for stretching the field. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a big, big concern for the Cowboys. And then Spencer Sanders, even though, like you said, it looks like he's going to play, but how healthy is he? And that was the concern to me coming out of last week, Gideon, was that after all the success that OSU had in building that 17-point lead, 24-7 lead in the second quarter, and then they went, the last 40 minutes of regulation without scoring a touchdown. And that's tough with a lot of losses that you just mentioned.
Well, the other thing is, Craig, it obviously looked to me like late in that game, we all know that Spencer, even though he had a couple of really nice runs that paid off in touchdowns early on in that game, he wasn't the same. A lot of what they do late in games when they're trying to preserve leads is rely on his ability to run the football, or at least rely on his ability for other teams to think that he's going to run the football. If you take that element away, where Oklahoma State becomes much more one-dimensional, they're much more easy to defend.
Yeah, he did most of his running early, and then 9 for 26 throwing the ball after the first quarter last week.
Mm-hmm.
And as you guys know, I mean, this is a team that has a pretty tough time running the ball anyway. I mean, their biggest running threat, I think, is their quarterback, Spencer Sanders. And now Rashaun going up against a Texas team that they've shown the ability to put points on the board, and they will stretch the field vertically with Worthy. But you got to start with trying to stop Bijan Robinson and Rashaun Johnson, right, Rashaun?
Yeah, and Texas's ability to run the football on top of their ability to stretch the ball down the field is really, really scary, man. I mean, and offensively, Oklahoma State's trying to go fast too, right? Like, I don't know if that's necessarily a good recipe for success when you're down your guys that can push the ball down the field and really threaten the defense vertically, right? And so, does that change their game plan? Do they say, hey, it doesn't. This is who we are. We're going to go out here and we're going to score these points and so on and so forth. I don't know if all of that matches up, but at the same time, I understand doing what you do. You don't change everything because you have a couple of guys down. Everybody's used to the offense running a certain way. Defensively, they struggled stopping the run, particularly in the fourth quarter last week. And I think that's probably going to continue, unfortunately, if they don't bring pressure. If they don't say, okay, you're not going to run the football on me, we're going to bring pressure and force our defensive backs to, hey, we got to be able to cover at least 2 and 3 seconds while we bring that pressure and try to hit home. Against TCU, we thought we were good enough, or at least it appeared to be thought that we were good enough to just line up in a base set and just stop them. that proved to not be correct, unfortunately. And so I'm interested to see the game plan on that side as well.
Well, and the difference there, Craig, is if you're Oklahoma State, you're a little bit worried about Max Duggan and his ability to take off and run. Quinn Ewers is not the same player. And
That's
so for Oklahoma State, as far as the defensive approach, it might differ a little bit today.
Yeah, good point. No, not near the threat that Duggan is running the football. But, again, the Texas running game is a huge threat. But the one thing the Cowboys do have going for them, I mean, number one, it's homecoming, and you guys know what that means. And I'm serious about this. I mean, the home field has meant a lot to OSU. They're on a good run at home, and they're on a great run against Texas. And I don't know how much that means to today's game, but it's interesting reading Barry Trammell here. I think it was yesterday's column, OSU has taken over, and we've talked about this a lot, Gideon, as the second most successful program in the Big 12 over the period of over a decade. Tram went back the last 12 and a half seasons, and OSU is 74-36, Texas 58-52. They've won 16 more games than Texas over the last 12 and a half years, and they've really dominated the Longhorns. Barry pointed out the Cowboys have been the higher-ranked team, since 2010, 8 times to Texas 4 at the time that the game was being played. And so my point is Mike Gundy, I mean, he has had the number of Texas. Now, I know it's not Steve Sarkisian. I know Sarkisian making his first trip into Stillwater. Yeah, a lot has changed, but Gundy has had their number for a lot of years now.
Mm-hmm. Craig, before we let you go here, give us a sense of how you think this game plays out. I know you talked about this throughout the week, and you obviously got a lot of insight from Coach Jones, but what do you think your final say on what happens today inside Boone Pickens Stadium?
I did make a bet a few weeks ago, Gideon, on a 5-game stretch of the Texas schedule, and talking with Sam Mays, and we were talking about how, OSU, K-State, TCU, he liked, Texas to lose all 3 of those. I thought that OSU would be the most dangerous of those 3 at the time of the bet. Now, with all the injuries that you're talking about, and especially to Spencer Sanders, but then the list of guys that are going to miss the game, like Bray and Johnson and Martin and Harper and Preston Wilson, I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of loss there. So, unfortunately, I got to go with Texas. I do think they'll put a lot of points on the board. I just don't think that OSU can score with them. Right now, I got it somewhere like 38-28 Longhorns. But again, I just got in the back of my mind, Gideon, I'm seeing, 40 minutes without scoring against a TCU defense that I don't think is that great. That concerns me for Spencer Sanders especially. So I don't know. I think Texas just catching them, at a good time for the Longhorns, a bad time for OSU.
Craig, appreciate the time. As always, enjoy the game today.
Thanks, Gideon. Thanks, Rashaun.
All right, that's Craig Humphreys. You can hear Craig every weekday morning here on the Sports Animal Sports Morning from 9 until noon. Coming up next, one of Rashaun's old teammates, Sam Mays, who you can also hear on the Sports Animal, will join us to offer his perspective on today's game, some of his OSU Texas memories as well. Rashaun Woods is in Stillwater, right across the street from Eskimo Joe's. He is inside our beautiful RV General Store mobile studio. It's part of Joe State Tailgate as we get set here on Bud Light Game Time for OSU and Texas inside Boone Pickens Stadium. We're just about an hour and a half away from kickoff here on Countdown to Kickoff on the Sports Animal.
Today, the Sooners are 4-3, 1-3 in conference. They go to Iowa State next Saturday at 11. Tulsa won last night, beating Temple 27-16. The Golden Hurricane is 3-4, 1-2 in conference play, and they're back in action next Saturday at home against SMU. Big 12 right now, mid-third quarter. Baylor leads Kansas 28-10. 2 o'clock, West Virginia is at Texas Tech. 7 o'clock, number 17 K-State is at number 8 TCU. Iowa State and Oklahoma are off today. Top 25, number 2 Ohio State leading Iowa 26-10 at the beginning of the second half. Early third quarter, number 3 Tennessee blowing out Tennessee Martin 52-7. Early third quarter, number 14 Syracuse leads number 5 Clemson 21-10. Still at the half, number 21 Cincinnati leads SMU 20-14. 2:30 kickoff today. Number 7 Ole Miss at LSU. Number 9 UCLA is at number 10 Oregon. Number 13 Wake Forest hosting Boston College. And number 25 Tulane is home for Memphis. 6 o'clock tonight, number 24 Mississippi State is at number 6 Alabama. And 6:30 tonight, Minnesota visits number 16 Penn State.
The Thunder are in Denver, looking to beat the Nuggets tonight at 8 on ESPN 640 and 98.1 FM. WWLS, the sports animal. WWLS FM, The Village, Oklahoma City, your home of the Oklahoma City Thunder. A Cumulus media station. Live from the RV General Store mobile studio at Eskimo Joe's, Joe State Tailgate. It's countdown to kickoff with Bud Light Game Time.
Less than an hour and a half away from kickoff in Stillwater. It's OSU and Texas today inside Boone Pickens Stadium. This is Joe State Tailgate, Bud Light Game Time on Countdown to Kickoff on WWLS, the Sports Animal. Gideon Hamilton here inside our Sports Animal studio. Rashaun Woods, the two-time All-American at OSU, is right across the street from Joe's inside our beautiful RV General Store mobile studio. And right now, we welcome in our good friend Sam Mays. And Sam, homecoming, we've talked about this before. It's always bigger, it's always better at Oklahoma State. And some of the floats, the involvement that we've seen this year is always top-notch from this group.
Yeah, no question. It's the best homecoming in America. There's no doubt about that. And earlier this week, I got into a bit of an argument with some guy on Twitter because I said, it's homecoming week and the Cowboys will play up. Like, I get that not everyone's homecoming matters to the football team. I don't even know it's homecoming in Norman until I get into the press box. I get that that's not a part of their tradition, but for ours, it is. And we were excited all week long. The body was absolutely fantastic, and the atmosphere surrounding the game was great. And so it's a part of Cowboy culture, right? It's kind of how we do it this week. And so I just, it's exciting. It's a big-time matchup. Somebody said to me also, I can't believe Oklahoma State scheduled Texas for homecoming. Well, Oklahoma State's had a ton of success against Texas in the last several years, and I kind of like the flex by Mike Gundy. I just hope his team is healthy enough to get it done.
Well, let me ask both of you guys, because when you played, there were a couple of games that were really tight between you and the Longhorns, but during that run, they were at another level than Oklahoma State football was. Did either of you anticipate that there would come a day where Oklahoma State has had the kind of run of success that they've had against the Longhorns? It's really gone on almost over a decade now, Sam.
First of all, I like how casually you put it, right? Like they weren't all just heartbreaking.
I didn't want to go all the way back there. No.
He just casually throws it out there like they weren't the most devastating losses of my career. Every single year we play Texas. It's been crazy. And look, I think some of it is, the downfall of Texas. I think we all know what kind of got them to the situation that they were in around 2009 and 2010. After that last title appearance, they did too much in recruiting too early. And so Gundy, I think, was on the rise big time. Oklahoma State has a national brand. They're playing those Thursday night games and getting a lot of exposure. They're winning a bunch of games. They win a title in 2011. So they just, as Texas fell, Oklahoma State was on the rise, and Gundy capitalized on it. It's been incredible watching them beat Texas over the years. It doesn't make me feel any better about the Longhorns ever, but I'm glad that Oklahoma State is having success against them.
Rashaun, what do you think about the leveling out of the programs to where Oklahoma State's had a bunch of wins? We've seen them against the Longhorns for the last decade or so.
Yeah, and Sam is right on. I mean, Texas is just as dominant as anybody we play. I can remember on the field, and their team speed was nothing like anything I've ever seen. And guys that can run all over the field. A lot of those guys played in the NFL, just big time. But at some point, they would have their 25 guys on scholarship locked in well before anybody else. And, quite frankly, I think there was some misses there. There was a coaching change there. I mean, I didn't think that 8-9 wins was good enough at one point. And I think they went a different direction. I can't remember the guy's name, but a long-time Texas coach there. But it truly, the program has not been the same since his departure. And they've tried to pay and buy the top coaches in the country. But at the end of the day, it's not necessarily the coaching, I don't think. It's the recruiting aspect of it, and how can they get or become the top destination for recruits once again. And along that road, the Cowboys have figured out, or Coach Gundy in particular has figured out how to kind of level the playing field from a recruiting aspect and really get guys, whether they're finding them under a rock or starting to get a lot more four-star guys, but however way you want to look at it, getting guys that can compete, coaching guys up at a high level, learning from the mistakes year in and year out, and just becoming a better program overall.
You can get a taste of the atmosphere on WWLS app, the Sports Animal Facebook page, or our Sports Animal YouTube page, where we have a lot of fans chiming in with their comments for today's game. You can make your predictions there as well. We'd love to get your take. Right now, we're going to get Sam Mays' take on this, and boy, this was tough to learn. Some of these guys have been in and out of the lineup. We know the story with Evers, obviously. Bray only played in that one game this year, so Jaden Bray's out, but Braden Johnson is out. Thomas Harper, Sam, is going to miss today's game. Preston Wilson, who obviously missed that game against TCU, he is still gone. And then Brock Martin. So pretty much every level that you look at offensively and defensively for Oklahoma State, there's not only an absence, but a key absence today.
Yeah, this is a tough game. I want to see Oklahoma State play Texas at 100%. That's just the reality. I think at that case, you probably have, what looks to be a top 15 Texas team and a top 10 Oklahoma State team. And the winner probably decides it by 3 points. Both teams score probably somewhere in the 40s. I think that would have been a shootout type of game. With everything that we're hearing about Spencer Sanders, you talk about Preston Wilson probably being the guy that they will miss the most today in this game. I think it's going to be very difficult for Oklahoma State to play the small ball they're going to need to play to keep Ewers and crew off of the field. Because the reality is, you have to deal with. What you have is who you are at this point in the season. The Oklahoma State secondary is not very good, and that's the reality of it. And when you look at the three-headed monster that Texas has got as receivers, they're not going to be able to cover them. And when you talk about Brock Martin being out now, you lose some of the pass rush. As much as I want to see the Cowboys beat Texas on homecoming, it would take a homecoming miracle, I think, to get this one done. I like Texas probably 41, 31, I think is what I said on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Now with the rest of those injuries, it's probably closer to 41, 21 or 24.
Sam, we appreciate the time as always. Great to catch up with you, man. Enjoy the game today.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
All right, that's Sam Mays. Played same time Rashaun did, same time that I went to school. Of course, a former colleague of mine doing the same thing that Rashaun and I are doing now, covering Oklahoma State football. And Rashaun, when you look at those absences, we saw what it meant last week to have Preston Wilson. That's where you want your most continuity is the offensive line. We saw a surprise starter in Russ a week ago. Mikowski had to come in after another injury. How important is it to keep the offensive line intact and performing the way that you want them to?
Well, those guys make everybody better around him. You know, if you got a quarterback that can really play in Spencer Sanders, he's better because he's not running for his life the entire time. Dominic Richardson is a tough runner. He doesn't have to be as tough when the offensive line is intact and blocking for him. And so if Oklahoma State is going to try and control this game at all today, the offensive line is going to have to be able to move Texas. It's going to have to be able to win that battle there, because if they win there, it allows Coach Gundy and company and the skill guys to pretty much do what they need to do to compensate for the guys that are out on both sides of the football, right?
What you think? What you think about Mike Gundy's comments earlier this week, Rashaun, that he was worried about Dominic Richardson's workload? Was that a diplomatic way, or did he genuinely believe that in saying that, hey, we're going to try to mix things up and get Jaden Nixon the ball a little bit more and get Ollie Gordon the ball a little bit more? Was that him coming out in support of maybe feeding Dominic Richardson too much, or does he really want to get a look at these two other guys?
It sounds like to me he wants to get a look at the other guys as well. I mean, Richardson's running the ball okay. I think he needs to continue, but in order to get the other guys looks, man, he got to run the ball more. I mean, the bottom line, to me, a guy carrying about 25 times is that's when you start getting into the realm of workload talk. I don't know if they're there yet, man. Last year, the running back situation they had, a guy was carrying it 25, 30 times a game. Okay, and so this year, not so much. Earlier in the year, he was only carrying it maybe 5 or 10 times a couple games that we had. So if Ollie Gordon is a guy that can be special, yeah, they need to up his carries. If Dominic Richardson is not getting the job done in that aspect, maybe, those comments are a lot easier for people to swallow, or just maybe for Dominic Richardson to know that, hey, I'm not going to get as many carries because maybe I need to be more productive, or maybe not. Maybe he means it exactly what he's saying. Okay, and so you can, whatever side you want to do, you're a guy that want to read between the lines, then you can do that. Quite frankly, if you just listen to exactly what Coach Gundy says and believe that he never lies about anything when he's talking to media, then at the end of the day, yeah, it's a situation where he needs to get those guys to look. Jaden Nixon has shown that he can be explosive. The kick return a couple weeks ago was proof of that. Give the guy the ball. Ollie Gordon, I keep hearing Jim talk about this guy so much, how good of a spring game that he had, and so on and so forth. By all means, if there was ever a day or ever a game or situation where we needed him, the fourth quarter last week would definitely have been that instance. And then today, with the guys down, with your inability to maybe have a significant deep threat at the receiver position, if you can run the football, today would be the day.
Rashaun, what's the atmosphere like out there? Looks like we've got as many people as we've had for a game all year long.
Yeah, we have right in front of Joe's here. We got the big Bud Light sign up here, and then the tents and everything is lit up. They got to actually have a camera. I guess I'm on Facebook Live right now, so this camera's looking at me. The camera doesn't look like it likes me very much, but lucky for me, I got a haircut today, so I'm on top of my game. Didn't know that it was coming, but. Pretty awesome, man. Everybody seems pretty excited about the game. The weather's beautiful, a little bit of wind here and there, but if you spend at least a couple months in Stillwater, the wind is part of the experience. So, but man, it's just flat out beautiful day for football.
Rashaun is there inside our RV General Store mobile studio right across the street from Eskimo Joe's, part of Joe State Tailgate. Coming up next, we'll be joined by the Oklahoman's Barry Trammell as he offers his thoughts on today's really important game in Big 12 play inside Boone Pickens Stadium, OSU and Texas, as we are just a little over an hour away from kickoff that game on ABC today. Gideon Hamilton, the two-time All-American at OSU, Rashaun Woods. This is Countdown to Kickoff on 98.1 FM, WWLS Sports Animal.
Sponsored by Mr. Sparky. Your time is valuable. Mr. Sparky offers same-day electrical service.
Don't have to put up with any malarkey. Call 888-8 Sparky.
About an hour away from kickoff in Stillwater, Oklahoma State and Texas inside Boone Pickens Stadium today. Gideon Hamilton here inside our Sports Animal Studios. The two-time All-American at OSU, Rashaun Woods, is inside our RV General Store mobile studio right across the street from Eskimo Joe's, part of Joe State Tailgate. And Rashaun, you heard that there, courtesy of Mr. Sparky. Who do you think could provide a spark for the Oklahoma State Cowboys in today's game against Texas?
It's always about a need factor for me. And I think it's either Brennan Presley or John Paul Richardson. Somebody's got to pick up the slack and provide a spark for this offense if we're going to have a chance or necessarily keep pace with this potent Texas passing attack.
All right. Joining us right now, of course, legendary columnist in the state of Oklahoma, does a great job covering all things sports in the state of Oklahoma for the Oklahoman. It's Barry Trammell. Barry, great to have you on the show for the first time this season. Boy, this injury report is really ugly. We all knew the story about Brendan Evers, but Bray and Jackson both out. Probably the two primary deep threats that Oklahoma State has this season. Thomas Harper, Brock Martin on defense, and then Preston Wilson remains out on the offensive line. What do you make of it?
Well, I mean, it's all degrees. It goes by degrees. I tell you, the Preston Wilson loss is something I think was overlooked last week. Shouldn't be overlooked this week. Cowboys miss him. He's done a nice job at center. We talked about the Cowboys' improvement against Baylor and Ika compared to last December. Well, Preston Wilson had something to do with that. So they're going to miss him. I tend to always think you can usually sort of scrape by a receiver somehow. There's not any Rashaun Woods on this team. So, I think they're going to be probably okay. Rashaun mentioned, Presley and John Paul Richardson needing to be key, and I think that's true. But this is what happens, and once you get past the second half of the season, guys get hurt. You just sort of gotta to make it go. The most important guy apparently is going to be out there. He's out here throwing now, so they got Sanders, and that's I think. If you're Mike Gundy, you'd probably say, okay, I'll take that.
How important is it not only for Spencer Sanders to be able to run the football at times today, but just for Texas to think that he is capable of running the football? Because that wasn't the case late in that game against TCU, Barry. You saw that.
Yeah, I think that's very key. I mean, we saw what Spencer could do early in the game. I mean, Cowboys scored 2 touchdowns. One's on a long yardage situation, and he finds a crease in the rush and scrambles 29 yards for a touchdown. And then he scores in the open field on an 8-yard run, in which he sort of danced around and made people miss him. So he's a major factor in this offense. He's lethal. He's a difference maker. So they need both, I think. They need Texas to think he's going to run, and they do need him to run. Because if he's not running, this offense loses a major component.
What's different about this Texas team? So they stay back in a little bit of a zone against TCU and kind of tried to keep everything in front of them based on the way that the Horned Frogs like to play, and that was pretty successful for a good part of the game. Now you don't have as mobile of a quarterback today with Quinn Ewers. You certainly have a dynamic playmaker with Xavier Worthy. They're able to run the football successfully, Tram. So what's different about the way that Texas plays football and, by extension, the way that Oklahoma State will have to defend them differently?
Well, I think the Cowboys can commit 7 people to pass defense. With TCU, the Cowboys like to rush 4. Last 2 or 3 years, their front 4 has been able to get to quarterbacks. But when you play TCU, that's a little squishy because, Max Dugan can take off and run and has been so effective. That's not going to happen with Texas. So you can rush 4, cover with 7, And if you get to him, great. If you don't get to him, great. You still got a numbers advantage, and you might have a fighting chance against Whittingham and Worthy and all those guys. So I think Cowboys would prefer probably to tackle this Texas situation than the TCU situation.
Mm-hmm.
Most defenses would. That's what mobile quarterbacks do to you. So to me, the key for Texas is not yours. It's shutting down Bijan Robinson and Rashaun Johnson, who's an excellent tailback also. So if they can hold those guys, you're not going to hold them to 35 yards rushing. I mean, but if you don't let them start off for 200 yards rushing, I think you've gone a long way towards victory.
What's this game mean? I think there might be. I don't even know if the second team that gets in the championship game this year, Craig, will have 2 losses. I think they might have 3. That's how jumbled I think this thing is going to go. I think someone emerges through this and kind of gets a break at the right time and might only lose 1 game in conference. But then I think it's a big-time scramble, especially if Kansas State beats TCU today. So that being said, how important is today's game for each of these teams, Oklahoma State and Texas, especially for the Cowboys? You have the Kansas road trip coming up back-to-back weeks against Kansas State and then Kansas, Iowa State at home. Then you go to Norman before finishing at home with West Virginia.
Well, it seems huge, right? I mean, it seems like it's massive. You lose at TCU. Now, it looks like there's 4 teams ahead of the pack, these 2, Texas and OSU, along with TCU, K-State, who are playing down in Fort Worth. It seems like there's 4 teams ahead of the pack, and Cowboys lost to one of them last week. So it would seem like a death knell if you lose this game. On the other hand, we're playing 45 conference games. And so far we've gotten through 17 of them. So, we're not even going to be halfway through the conference race after this Saturday.
Right.
So are those 4 the 4 contenders? Maybe, probably, but anybody really willing to rule out Baylor? Is it so defined that TCU is the front runner in K-State? There's a lot left to be. You're right. I looked this up in the 12 years of the 10-team format. I guess it'd be 11 years. I think only 3 times has the second place finisher been 8-1. So we're almost guaranteed a 2-loss team in Arlington. And in this kind of parity, this is going to be said it this week. This is like the NFL.
Yeah.
Anybody can beat anybody, and all the games are close. And it's possible that we could have a 3-loss team in Arlington. That wouldn't be crazy at all.
Yeah.
So, don't write off the season. The loser shouldn't write off the season, whether it's Texas or OSU. But it sure makes it a lot more difficult if you want to get to Jerry World.
Last one with Barry Trammell. And Tram, we do want to encourage folks that are listening or watching us right now on Sports Animals YouTube page, Sports Animals Facebook, or the WWLS app to check out some of your work over the last couple of days about Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy saying he'll miss Texas when they eventually go to the SEC. This is one of those rivalry games that he was fond of, but also one that I wanted you to talk about on the air with us today, why Oklahoma State is poised to fill their stadium even without these 2 all-important games. We know from attending these games for decades now that it is just different, the atmosphere, the environment, and the attendance when Oklahoma State plays OU and Texas. But you say there are still some bright days ahead in terms of filling up Boone Pickens, even when those 2 teams depart to the Southeastern Conference.
Yeah, this is the Cowboys' 3rd straight sellout, and they've done an outstanding job of building up the fan base. Too often the Cowboys get compared to like OU, and their tickets and their stadium size and all that. But OU's the exception, the size of the stadium and the fan base. And for a school that was historically drawing in the 30s and in the low 40s, that was for decade after decade. That was the typical OSU attendance. To build that up to where you're consistently above 50,000, OSU hasn't had a crowd under 50,000 since 2010. And now they've sold out 3 straight games. They sold out the entire 17, I think it was, season. So they've had 9 sellouts in the last 5 years. And it's become independent of who they're playing. I mean, the last 3 opponents, Texas, marquee game, Tech, sort of a middle game, Arkansas, Pine Bluff. Nobody in their right mind ought to want to watch that game, but every seat was taken. So they've done a great job of marketing. They've turned it into a game day adventure. Jesse Martin, the associate AD, he gave me a great tour before the game. He drove me through all the tailgating areas and just the revelry and the fandom and, you know, the tens of thousands of people who make this not just a game experience, but an all-day experience out on the campus and tailgating and taking in the game. They've reached a point where they're going to be fine on that front. Now, the TV contract is not going to be what it would be with OU in Texas. But selling the tickets and filling this place up, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Particularly when you look at the new teams coming in, people are going to be interested in seeing Cincinnati and Brigham Young and Central Florida. So I think the future for the environment and the atmosphere is very bright. They got to figure out the money, but that's the case most years with most everybody.
Barry, appreciate the time as always. Enjoy the game today.
All right, see you guys later.
All right, that's the Oklahoman's Barry Trammell. Rashaun, what do you think about what Barry had to say there? Because we know from attending these games that it's harder to find parking, you know, for instance, when they play OU in Texas. There's just more of an inherent difference when those two teams come to Stillwater. What do you think about Oklahoma State in terms of what Barry had to say, poised to kind of continue on some interest in the program even without those 2 big games on the schedule?
Yeah, you know, success and how well Oklahoma State fans filled the stadium was really dependent on who they were playing, right? And so a lot of improvements from that standpoint. The program in itself and the success that it's had over the Gundy tenure is a big part of what you're seeing and how people feel overall about the school and really just about the program in general. And so as you have success, people want to be a part of that. And I think that's one of the best things that can happen for Cowboy football. And that's something that we got to continue. You know, the fact that you sell out at Pine Bluff for Pine Bluff is oh man, I couldn't believe my ears when I heard that. And so that's big time. That's big time because that's where, you know, some of the better programs, one thing that they always have is they always have a fan base that is second to none. And so you don't talk about that as much. You talk about more so the tradition and so on and so forth. But the tradition of programs also encompasses the fans and how they feel about the program and how they hold their program in such a high esteem. And so now that the Cowboy fans are in that realm, you can start to talk about the tradition of Cowboys and so on and so forth, and all the statement that Coach Gundy made last year about we have a logo too, and then so on and so forth. Yeah. You know, has a little bit passively to do with you know how you view yourself, how you know the fans view their program, and right now you know it's hard to argue that the Cowboys are really in a place now from a fan's perspective, a good place, or as good of a place as it's ever been.
So Matt Meyer and I were looking at this a little bit earlier, and yeah, I mean, in terms of engagement and involvement early on before the game, I think one of the things that most OSU fans are excited about is the look of this team. And Matt, from what we've seen here, I guess they're going with all orange today, from top to bottom. Is that right?
That's correct. And the helmet is a throwback. It has the throwback cowboy on top of a bucking horse. I want to say this is a logo that was used in the late 60s, if I'm not mistaken. But it's an orange helmet, orange jersey, orange pants. It's the orange jersey and orange pants you're used to, but a little bit of a throwback helmet with the with an old school cowboy on top of a bucking horse. Love the look, and I think it's getting a lot of compliments online as well.
Glowing reviews so far. We'll see what it looks like out there on the field today. But, yeah, so far, folks are fans. That was 64 different combinations you can use. This one they seem to hit on. All right, coming up next, we'll get some final thoughts from Rashaun Woods. Keys to the game today for Oklahoma State and Texas. What do the Cowboys need to do well to get a big conference victory. He is inside our RV General Store mobile studio. And get by, say hi to Rashaun. Still got a few minutes left to do that. Inside Joe State Tailgate, right across the street from Eskimo Joe's there in Stillwater. I can see him there on our Sports Animal YouTube page and Sports Animal Facebook. I'm Gideon Hamilton here inside our Sports Animal studios, and we are nearing the 45-minute mark away from kickoff between the Cowboys and the Longhorns. This is Countdown to Kickoff on the Sports Animal.
Order number 3 Tennessee leads Tennessee Martin 58-14. Early fourth, number 14 Syracuse leads number 5 Clemson 21-16. Late third, number 21 Cincinnati leads SMU 29-14. 2:30 kickoffs today. Number 7 Ole Miss is at LSU. The big one, number 9 UCLA at number 10 Oregon. Number 13 Wake Forest hosting Boston College. And number 25 Tulane is home for Memphis. 6 o'clock tonight, number 24 Mississippi State visits number 6 Alabama. Number 16 Penn State is home for Minnesota at 6:30.
Countdown to kickoff and Bud Light Game Time from inside the RV General Store mobile studio at Eskimo Joe's. Joe State Tailgate. Sponsored by Clearsight LASIK, the Law Office of Warden and Carbinger, Marco's Pizza, Michener Farron Jewelers, Mr. Electric, and Oklahoma Farm Bureau Insurance. It's time for Weapons of the Game. Sponsored by Travis Watkins, tax resolution and accounting firm. IRS problems? No problem. Call 405-451-3399.
Just a little over half an hour away from kickoff in Stillwater in Boone Pickens Stadium today. It'll be Oklahoma State and Texas in a vitally important Big 12 conference shootout. Gideon Hamilton here inside our Sports Animal Studios. The two-time All-American at OSU, Rashaun Woods, is inside our RV General Store mobile studio right across the street from Eskimo Joe's, part of Joe State Tailgate, Bud Light Game Time here on Countdown to Kickoff. So, Rashaun, you heard it there. In terms of the weapon of the game, we've talked a lot about those slot receivers maybe turning into some more down-the-field threats or making plays after the catch. But you talked about Bryson Green a little bit earlier. I wanted to know your take on him because what Bryson is doing is making a lot of catches in traffic this year, making a lot of plays after the catch. Talk about the kind of route runner he is, the kind of player he is. Is he a guy that's getting open, or is he a guy that is just kind of in that spot to have to go up and make a play in tight coverage? What are they doing with him? How are they utilizing him this year?
You know, he has ability to run pretty good routes without really going back into studying his game. You know, typically he's not on the top of the list to do that. But what jumps off the page for me is his ball skills. You know, everybody can't go up and get the football, and that was one of my strong suits. And so when you've got a guy consistently catching the ball in traffic, you take notice and you think to yourself, well, if he's doing that to where if you're throwing him 3 jump balls and he's catching, 2 of the 3, or he's catching, that's a high percentage for a guy going down the field, which means that if I'm throwing the football up, it's positive things are happening more so than not. That doesn't mean that he's the fastest. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's jumping the highest. That just means that when the ball is in the air, he has a knack of body control. He has the size and awareness to go up and make the play, which is something that most guys at any level of football don't have. You either have that or you don't. It's very difficult to teach, and he has that. And so they have no choice. Johnson's out. Bray is out. Bryson is the only guy that fits the description for a downfield threat. And so whether he's covered or not, Oklahoma State and Casey Dunn, those guys are going to have to just trust that Spencer Sanders can put it up on a shelf, so to speak, and hope that Bryson Green can come down with a couple of them today, because they're going to definitely need it.
We've seen them throw increasingly more to those cowboy backs, so to speak. You still have guys like Rashad Owens on the squad. You've got those young kids. The red shirts might be in question there. So I don't know about, Braylon Presley and Shetron, for instance, as guys to keep an eye on today. But there is, if you want to talk about a position core there that does have numbers to it, it's those wide receivers. And the other way that you can get the ball downfield a little bit more is through the screen game. And Mike Gundy specifically talked about this during his media availability early in the week and said, I think Dominic Richardson is probably better in space, and that's where we need to get him the ball and maybe utilize him in the screen game a little bit more. Does that make sense to you, Rashaun?
Yeah, I mean, just get the ball, get the guy the ball. He's downhill, however way you want to do it, right? He needs to get the football. Whether you're swinging it out or so on and so forth, Brennan Presley needs to get the football. He does not, to me, I've said this many times, he's not a guy that you got to throw the ball in risky situations. You don't have to run expensive plays to get him the football. Throw a bubble screen out there to the guy, get a couple of blocks in front of him. He's going to make a couple guys miss. He's electric with the ball in his hands, right? I've always felt like they've underutilized him in that aspect. But again, if Dominic Richardson is the guy that can fit that mold as well, by all means, get the football out there. You've got to be efficient. You've got to be able to hold the ball a little bit. The no huddle, going as fast as I can right now, I do not think is the answer. I think that's going to be a disaster, I think. If you go up there and you're going 3 and out because you can't get any consistency, and now you wear down a defensive line that they're not bringing pressure. And so it makes it even tougher for Oklahoma State to get pressure on the quarterback, and that ends up being the beginning of the end. They truly need to get the defensive ends for Oklahoma State involved, whether through getting those guys isolated one-on-one by bringing 5-man pressures, okay, and get to the quarterback. Make that quarterback make decisions and put the Texas offense in situations where they get off the field early. When you get to football, establish consistency on the offensive side of the ball. If you're 3 and out, if you have a big play here and there, that's great. That's awesome, okay? But you have to be able to win the time of possession today. If there was ever a time that Oklahoma State needs to win the time of possession, it is today. Because if they don't, this Oklahoma State defense will wear down in the fourth quarter. We saw it last week when they had control, okay? And so history should not repeat itself today. I'm hoping that as a staff, as a team, you learn from the mistakes from last year, from a time management situation, and know that if they are up, that they can not necessarily let up off the gas, okay, but go into a 4-minute situation where you're more in tune on helping your defense by controlling the clock offensively, controlling the ball through the running game and short passes like we talked about to Dominic Richardson and Brennan Presley, okay, and then when the opportunity arises, take the shot downfield to Bryson Green and see if he will rise to the occasion today.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to get your thoughts finally here on Texas. One conference loss, that was to Texas Tech, obviously, who gave Oklahoma State a difficult time. They survive a week ago at home against Iowa State, a late fourth down touchdown to go ahead in that one. And then I kind of get a call to go their way late in that game as Iowa State was driving, or else this would be a much more important game for them just to stay alive in the Big 12 conference race. They've got a player that I'm really intrigued with at the receiver position. That's Xavier Worthy, who's a little bit of a smaller guy, but his speed is electrifying, and he just finds a way to get open, Rashaun. I wanted to get your thoughts on him and how to defend that type of player.
Yeah, Texas is still in that mode of using RPOs, throwing the ball out quick and so on and so forth, and they'll go fast as well, okay? But talent-wise, they're going to have it. It's always been a situation where Texas is more so they're not executing. They haven't executed in the past. They've always had the guys, and they've definitely now with the NIL, they're paying for the guys. They're doing whatever they need to do to get the guys in there, right? So they're loaded, man. They're loaded, but they're not necessarily the Texas teams of the past. They still can be beat. The Alabama game made them look very, very good. Obviously, them beating OU the way they did make them look big time. But here's the deal on Texas. As good as we think that they are, okay, you saw last week against Iowa State that they're not as good as we think and they're not as bad. Somewhere in between, we can find the Texas Longhorns, and we know what kind of team Oklahoma State is, okay, and what they can be. I still think Oklahoma State is the better team, although they have the injuries. But, man, when you talk about as evenly matched of a game right now as it can potentially be, that is what we're going to witness tonight. I hope that the Cowboys and the coaching staff do everything they can, which they typically do. Coach Gundy and staff are known for making really, really good decisions in very close games. And last week was one of the few times that you question some of the decisions late and it didn't go Oklahoma State's way. But you look at all of the games from last year until now in which they've won by 10 points or less, and very critical decisions were involved in the success of this program and the success of the last 2 seasons, and that just doesn't go away, okay? And guys were hurt in those instances as well. Last year, Boise State riding a 22-game win streak at home. The fade route on 4th down to Cal Cabinets, which you wonder why does he do that, okay? Nobody's questioning that crazy decision right now, but last week they lose. You question why they continue to go fast and so on and so forth. What will it be today? Will they go for it in critical situations because they feel like they need to press to get the points, right? What kind of team and who will the Oklahoma State Cowboys be in critical situations early on? Because that'll tell you how they feel about the game. Perfect example, and I'll end with this, the Baylor game. They went for it multiple times in places that you don't necessarily agree with it, but that tells you everything about what they feel about the Cowboys, and that they felt like they needed to do something extra to win the game, and that was at home on top of that.
Right.
Is that where the Cowboys and Coach Gundy goes with this game? Does he feel like something else needs to be done? Does he feel like trick plays are in order? We saw that a couple of times last week that were successful. One of the trick plays wasn't. Does he feel like he needs extra? If he does, are we there prepared? Are we going to see that? A lot of questions that'll be answered. It should be an exciting game today in Stillwater.
Well, join us immediately following the game, and we'll find out if Rashaun's analysis was as on point as his haircut was.
There you go.
Today for pregame. And we'll hope that it was. So we'll be on as soon as this game is over, taking your postgame phone calls, and we're also going to merge over with our pregame show for Oklahoma City Thunder basketball. The Oklahoma Men's Clinic Thunder forecast. I want to thank Jay Pitts and Cisco out there right across the street from Eskimo Joe's, part of Joe State Tailgate, Bud Light Game Time inside our RV General Store mobile studio. For Rashaun Woods, I'm Gideon Hamilton. Don't go anywhere. Countdown to Kickoff rolls on as we hear from the head coach, the Oklahoma State Cowboys, Mike Dundee. That's coming up next.